Yeah, so this session today is going to be talking a bit about greener IT and the way that Platform.sh has been working with a group of customers, specifically today talking about how we've been working with UNICEF, Switzerland and Liechtenstein. We're also very lucky that Manfred Ruf from UNICEF is with us today, and he's going to be talking a bit more about how their green strategy also connects with the work that we've been doing, the work that MD Systems and Miro and his team have been doing as well. And I think, but what I'd like to start with today is really go into that last bit of the title here, which is, where we're talking about lowering emissions in a tough climate. And that's, I think also pretty much a reference to where we are right now, because it's not an easy situation. I think we have a lot of dynamics in the world that don't really seem to be going the way that we might want them to, in terms of the way that sustainability is viewed, the way that ESG in general is viewed as well. So environmental, social and governance is seeing, like headwinds in a lot of different spaces that we see, whether that's, across the Atlantic Ocean, or whether that's also in big corporations, banks, those kind of things in Europe as well. So, we're seeing that there are people rowing back on sustainability commitments, that regulatory frameworks that looked like they were going to actually be tightening up these kind of things have actually been quite severely reduced in quite a lot of ways. And of course, also that we went past the 1.5 degree mark, and most likely that's not something we're gonna get back based on the current trajectory. So the question really there is, what do we want to do? Oh yeah, and I forgot also AI, of course. So that's another one of the massive things that's happening right now, and which is affecting the way that all of us think about these things. And I didn't want to just tell you a beautiful little story with a bow on top about how, great it is that we're all pals and that we've done something really nice together. Although I will also tell you that story. But I think even more important is to, have that dialogue about where we are right now with these topics, because being someone who's a sustainability advocate these days is not as easy as it might have been 3 years ago, 5 years ago, where, the actual global environment for that was much easier and much more accepting. I mean, does anyone else here have a feeling in that kind of direction? I'd love to get some feedback on that later. And, obviously we'll be asking for questions and to have a bit of a dialogue here as well. So, time passes, I think, is what we say here, isn't it, really? So, what do we do? Do we stay the course? Do we give up? Do we refocus? Do we just say, well, okay, we used to have ethical goals, we used to have strategic goals in a certain direction, and now the only thing that counts is your wallet, which is what one of the people that I follow on LinkedIn wrote recently, and I was like, wow, she never used to talk like that, which kind of blew my mind. But there you go, and that's the kind of thing you're seeing these days. And I think despite that, there are, nonetheless things that are going to remain true, even in a time of uncertainty. And I think, we can also see that things don't always align as we might expect. You can also find allies in unexpected places. And in those terms, I think it's interesting to see how we can explore those options and, keep asking questions. So I think one of the ideas there is, for example, that sustainability, what we call greener IT, is something that, in general, people would think, okay, well, that's something that comes from, a kind of a top-down initiative, which maybe has something to do with compliance, maybe has something to do with, maybe it's a pet topic of the CEO or someone else. But nonetheless, what's really interesting is over the past few years, there's another big trend that we're seeing, which is, of course, FinOps. I don't know, are people familiar with FinOps? Is anyone, aware of that? Or are people, like using that in their businesses? Show of hands there. Anyone? No one's come across this term? Okay, well, so FinOps is essentially the idea that, like you actually have a way to analyze your business processes and the way that the money is coming in and the way that the money is going out, and that you can actually work out where your money is being spent. Also, for example, in your online estate. And in that way, you can very quickly identify where, you've got excessive spend and those kind of things. And of course, that means that it aligns actually really well and in a really interesting way with the sustainability topic, because in fact, what you want to be able to do is to work out where you're wasting, like your resources, inside your development process, inside your deployment, inside your hosting process, and so on. And from that perspective, I think, it's maybe important to, see that there might be different approaches to this that don't necessarily only go through the old style messaging that we might have been thinking about.
What I wanted to say. At the bottom you see the code examples if you want to integrate.
Oh, I had a little animation in there that I forgot to even show earlier, so so I think with that in mind, what I'd like to do is maybe take a step back and talk a bit more about how Platform.sh as a company came to this topic of greener IT. So I think if you're not aware, Platform.sh is a company that provides an end-to-end solution for applications throughout the developer life cycle through to the actual hosting of an application. And the way that we became interested in this was certainly something that came in the first instance from questions and ideas that came from our customers, and that they actually brought us to that point. And it's in fact one of the basic building blocks of who we are, how we identify as a company. I think, it's certainly not an afterthought, and it's really a case that we're there. What we want to be able to do is to build the most efficient cloud and really allow our customers to thrive and at the same time lower their impact on the planet. And because that's an ambitious goal, it's not something that, can happen all at once. And I think, sustainability is a bit like usability. It's actually, a process rather than a one and done. Yeah, okay, we got the stamp. Now we're sustainable. It's something that, you actually have to do every single day, and something that keeps on changing as well. So just because you managed to be sustainable this year doesn't mean you're going to be sustainable next year. Now, there's actually something there that I wanted to mention. Just one sec. I know this is like real time. Looks at something on phone, but don't worry, it's actually a note that I've got here, because it's yeah. So I think what I mean by that is that, for example, you actually have, I think maybe when you think about sustainability, often it would be, for example, okay, well, we can make each CPU cycle more efficient, and by doing that, we can actually lower, the amount of usage. But of course, I think some people might have heard of the Jevons paradox, which is, basically that the more efficient you make something, the more people use it, so that in fact things just keep going up. And so, in fact, in that way, you really have to keep on fighting against that. So that's why it has to be an iterative process, and why it has to you have to keep on, following up and working at that again and again and again to make sure you get to the right point. So anyway, with Platform.sh, this is a process that we started a long time ago, back in 2021, where we started trying to work out exactly what we want to do to address this greener IT topic. And it took us quite a few years and quite a lot of work and quite a lot of actual effort from all sorts of different people inside the company and outside the people. And we came to a few conclusions that I'd say are interim because, of course, like I say, you have to keep on moving. And the three that we've got here that I'd like to just go into in a bit more detail is, number one, you have to build a solid base for the work you're doing. Number two, you have to establish a method. And three, you focus on the biggest wins. So in terms of building a solid base, that's a lot of words on that slide, actually. Yeah. But the problem that you have with that is that, in fact, trying to work out how your actual usage spreads out across the various services that you're using can be really quite complicated, especially when you're doing a multi-cloud setup. So one interesting difference between maybe Platform.sh and a lot of other platform as a service providers is that what we do is actually multi-cloud. So that means we can run on AWS, we can run on GCP or Azure or other providers as well, for example, such as OVH as well. So that means that we actually have all sorts of different clouds that we can run on top of. But that means also that we have to be able to interpret the billing and the information we get from those different clouds. And that is actually really quite a task because the way that they actually present that is quite different from one cloud to the next. And in that way, we end up having, like a really complicated setup because you need to be able to actually reconcile the reporting of one team with the reporting of another. And that's something that really took us quite a few years and actually meant that we actually had to build up a team to do that. And that's exactly this FinOps team that I was mentioning before, that they actually spent the time to actually work out how that resource usage actually mapped across the various providers, because the actual the billing and the reporting that they provide, especially the reporting that they provide in terms of their carbon reporting, is massively different from one to the other. And so building that solid base is really important for us to be able to actually give the right kind of information back to our customers. But at the same time, I think it shows that, in fact, we are, in a way, we're more similar to a customer than to one of our platform as a service competitors, because they tend to actually all be using, just one cloud. And then they're dependent on that one cloud for their carbon reporting, which tends to actually be, I'm not saying it's all science fiction, but a lot of it is quite questionable in some cases. So the fact that we have various sources that we have to pull on to do this means that we're actually in a very similar situation to a lot of our customers in that way, and we can actually help to actually work out what is a good basis for this and how to actually move forward in that way. And in addition to having those internal teams to do this work, we also have, in our case, an external team for doing the actual certification. So we use a company called Greeley, and they are people who actually provide energy and CO2 data and then certify our results as well. Right. So as well as having a base, you also need to have a methodology, an approach that you can actually use for iteratively working through that process. And the one that we've developed over the last couple of years is this mode method, as we call it. So that means that you begin with measuring. You then go through an optimization phase. So obviously you need to be able to measure what you're doing. You need to be able to then take that, go through an optimization, deploy that, go through that and see if that actually works as it should. And then, of course, move on to the educate phase. And obviously educate doesn't just mean educate people around us because we're so fantastic. It actually means that we should be educating ourselves and actually empowering our teams internally to understand how that works and to work together with our customers to do that and to be able to move forward in that kind of way, which is of course also why, we're doing a talk like this today with UNICEF and with MD Systems. So you're warned, Miro, you have to come and do a word as well in a minute, yeah. Don't pull such a face, please. Yeah, so anyway, when you do have that methodology, what you need to do next, of course, is then focus on the biggest wins. And what we've seen with some of our larger customers, is that actually migrating workloads that we have in regions which have a high CO2 usage can be very effectively done, like moving them to much lower CO2 regions. So, for example, there's another large company in Switzerland that isn't here today, but I'd like to take them as an example. They have a nice little logo that's got a nest on it with a bird, and they sell all sorts of stuff that you might find in the supermarket. And we worked with them to actually move a lot of their websites from Ireland, in this case, where, let's say the Republic of Ireland doesn't have the greatest CO2 footprint. I think we have someone from Ireland here today. And, it's about 500 milligrams per megawatt hour. So it's actually, significantly higher than you would see, for example, in other places in Europe. So a great example of that is Sweden, where instead of that, you're probably looking at more like 20 or 30 milligrams. So really, like a massive difference. And so this is the way that we've decided to do that, but also how we're working with other customers. So, for example, the example here of Dublin to Zurich, that also makes a massive difference. And as you can see, we're talking about probably a 70% reduction. This does have an asterisk with it as well. I'm not giving you final approved results. I actually had communications with our team this morning, our sustainability people, and said, yeah, well, they're not certified yet, so you can't give any official numbers, but that's kind of the number that we're looking at. Now, that's an amazing thing to do, and it's great because you do it once, and it'll pay you back every year. But it's just a one-off, On the other hand, there are all sorts of other things that you could do, of course, and, like one of the things that I've seen a lot in Drupal community as well is, like talking about how do you refactor code, how do you optimize your websites to improve, like their performance, and to actually, get gains out of that, much more marginal gains maybe. But nonetheless, what's interesting about that way of doing things, of course, is the fact it's an ongoing process, it's iterative, you can actually lower that year on year. And so I think, they do actually have to complement each other, but it really does make sense to start with, as I say, this, the approach of first doing the migrations and then doing the second step, which is going to be, like a smaller step-by-step approach as well.
What you showed in the video.
And this is just like a visualization of, showing how, the difference between what we'd see in Dublin, for example, and in Zurich. And we use a really a great service called Electricity Maps, which actually gives you the ability to go in and see in real time, like exactly how, like one country compares against another across Europe and across the world. And it'll actually also show you the in and outflows of electricity across borders. And this is a service that we use, and we don't use, like just the real-time number. We do an annual average. So what you're seeing here, for example, the 70 gram is an annualized average for Switzerland, and you'll be able to see that, for example, with Sweden, it's even lower, but, nonetheless, you can definitely see the massive difference there. Also, of course, look at Germany, really a highly, it's sad to see that. I do live in Germany. I'm hoping that we're going to get better at that soon, but yeah. It does mean, of course, also that people are really interested in having hosting in Switzerland rather than in Germany, for example, and we see customers that are actually doing that right now and who have moved their stuff here as well. Great, so that was just a little introduction, and now I'd like to hand over to Manfred, who is going to talk about UNICEF and...
Vielen Dank.
Ja.
Hallo zusammen. Ich switche jetzt auf Deutsch. Ist etwas einfacher. Ich leite die UNICEF Schweiz, Liechtenstein, den IT-Teil, bin Head of IT and Data Management. Das Data Management ist bei uns in der Abteilung. Arbeite jetzt seit 20 Jahren bei UNICEF, also auch schon nachhaltig. Ja. Okay. Und möchte ein ganz bisschen erzählen, wie wir dazu gekommen sind, unsere Webseite umzuziehen und die Zusammenarbeit mit M-Systems und Platform.sh. Das ist so der Weg, den wir gegangen sind. Der hat so im 21 angefangen mit so Kleinigkeiten in der Nachhaltigkeit und sind dann weiter im 22 die Pakete für die sind wir dann von der GE verabschiedet worden, ein Maßnahmenpaket. Das ist dann wir haben das übergeordnete Organ, den Vorstand, der hat dann die 25 Ziele, die es hat, auch für übergeordnet ist bei uns UNICEF international. Wir sind eines von 36 Komitees weltweit, die eigenständig für sich sind, aber im Namen von UNICEF international handeln. Das heißt, die 25 Ziele kommen auch von oben runter und wir haben uns dann für 8 vorerst entschieden und sind jetzt dazu übergegangen, die ganzen Nachhaltigkeitsziele mit in die Komplettstrategie aufzunehmen. Es gibt jetzt dann einen ersten Nachhaltigkeitsbericht von der UNICEF und wird dann 25 bis 30 werden die weiteren 25 Ziele angegangen. Wir haben die ersten 8 Ziele in verschiedene Blocks aufgebaut. Das sind für Kinder und Jugendliche, das bedeutet zum Beispiel in Kindrechten, jedes Kind hat ein Recht, in einem geschützten Umfeld aufzuwachsen oder ein Recht auf Bildung, und UNICEF ist dafür da, diese Rechte nachhaltig zu stabilisieren. Dann haben wir den internen Teil, die Unternehmensführung, Gesundheit, Bildung, damit wir internes Wissen stärken, um dann auch intern Gelder, die Ressourcen einzusetzen, damit Gelder gespart werden können und auch wieder fürs Wohl der Kinder eingesetzt. Und dann der Hinterblock, wo dann abzielt eigentlich auf das, was wir jetzt gemacht haben mit dem Umzug von der Webseite. Das ist der Teil für den Planeten, Klima und Energie, Wasser. Und dann auch wieder, je mehr Energie wir einsparen, so besser geht's der Umwelt und auch wieder Einsparungen und weiter für die Kinder. Das sind dann die weiteren 25 Ziele, die bis 2025, von 2025 bis 30 aufgenommen worden sind und jetzt in die Nachhaltigkeitsstrategie aufgenommen wurden. Hier ist ein ganzer Überblick, das ist dann UNICEF international. Nach den ganzen Vorgaben handeln alle 36 Committees. Wir kriegen hier aus den ganzen Informationen und Dokumenten können wir diese Ziele raussuchen, werden auch begleitet von UNICEF international, sodass die Ressourcen auch in allen Komitees gleichmäßig gebündelt werden können und jeder eigentlich am gleichen arbeitet und nicht jeder für sich etwas Separates macht. Ja, was dann eigentlich so daraus kommen ist, wir haben so typisch in der Firma haben wir so eine Seite gefunden, wo man seine Webseite auf den Fingerabdruck prüfen lassen kann. Sind dann zu Empty Systems gegangen und haben gesagt, ob das nicht was wäre. Sind dann nicht so begeistert davon, weil man doch die Seite ins Unschöne reduzieren müsste, um wirklich dann ein sauberes Ergebnis oder wirklich Einsparungen kriegen würde. Dann ist die Idee gekommen von mir und von Sascha, dass wir doch mit Platform.sh in die Schweiz ziehen könnten. Und das war, glaube ich, in der Schweiz dann neu ein Rechenzentrum aufmachen, neues,
Ja, genau.
wo wir dann in die Richtung umziehen konnten. Es ist nicht nur das Umziehen, auch wir haben so viele kleine Sachen gemacht, wo man mit Plattformen hat, durch die gute Skalierung, wo man hat, relativ schnell Testumgebungen aufbauen kann. Man zum Beispiel auch in der Schweiz wird ja immer noch, es ist gut 2/3 im Einzahlungsschein bezahlt. Das heißt, bei uns auf der Webseite wird über einen Einzahlungsschein gestellt und der wird dann teils noch oft ausgedruckt und die Leute gehen damit auf die Post und zahlen dann. Und da haben wir mit Empty Systems dann auch relativ schnell, recht kurzfristig schnell, noch wenn der Zahlungsprozess abgeschlossen ist, den Payment Slip, den Einzahlungsschein direkt auf der Webseite einblendet, direkt schon mit den fertigen Zahlungsinformationen drin, wo dann direkt an Salesforce schon übergeben werden. Und hier konnte man also schon, das sind gute 20%, die direkt jetzt über den Einzahlungsschein zahlen. Das heißt, der wird nicht mehr ausgedruckt, aber wird auch wieder nachhaltig an Ressourcen eingespart. Und das sind halt so kleine Sachen, die man dann auch relativ gut machen kann. Und das ist auch nicht, weil Platform.sh so flexibel ist und auch die Zusammenarbeit so
Super.
funktioniert.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Ja, und wir konnten natürlich auch den ganzen Ablauf vom Umzug recht smooth ablaufen, würde ich sagen.
Ja, zum Glück, Miro und Sascha haben das smooth gemacht, würde ich mal sagen. Wir haben da zusammen gut gearbeitet und ich glaube, es hat richtig gut geklappt. Und ja, wir freuen uns, dass wir jetzt die UNICEF auch jetzt mal hier in der Schweiz haben. Ja. Cool. Danke, Manfred. Ich werde dann einfach mal weitermachen mit meinen noch paar Slides. I'll switch back to English at that point. Yeah, I think, as Manfred said, I think, in the end, it's about the collaboration and having the consciousness within the agencies, with the customer as well, and being able to do that in a way that where we can work hand in hand to make that happen. I'm not going to read Manfred's quote. I think that would be unfair, but I thought it would be good to put that in the deck so that later on people can take a look. And for anyone who's interested, we have a little case study that we also did on the Platform.sh website, and I know that there's also an MDE Systems case study as well. So, this deck will also be available. I think afterwards we'll have it on the Mountain Camp website as well. So, if people would like to take a look, they can take a look at those little case studies as well. Yeah, so I think having looked at the the general framework and then also the specific case of what we have been doing with UNICEF. It might also be good to then take a look more at the more general idea of the greener offering that we have and the various components that we like to think of as being, like the essential parts of doing that. I think the first part of that is just, just a reminder of what Platform.sh does in total as an end-to-end solution for application development and hosting. So the fact that we can help teams to actually, build, run, and scale their applications in a much more dynamic and a much more efficient way also means that, in fact, from that perspective already we have some of those efficiencies built in throughout the process. And hopefully it means that, for example, instead of people having to think about, okay, well, what are the steps that we need now actually to get backups running on our system? And what are the mistakes we're going to make during doing all of that? All of the different things that you might actually have to do otherwise. In that way, actually having, a way to streamline your operations, to simplify the way that you do things. Efficiency can also be simply in terms of those workflows as well. It's not just about, how many, the amount of CO2 that's being produced per kilowatt hour or whatever, and, per CU cycle. The way that Platform.sh is set up is, in fact, we have basically what we call is like a pyramid of efficiency. So if you look down at the bottom, we can see that starts with, the actual efficiency of your grid. So, essentially that means, you can see the various countries and their kind of efficiency. And in that way, you can have that one-off 10 times factor of efficiency. Looking at, the services, depending on your IaaS choice, that can also have an effect as well. So depending on which of those you're using, you're also going to have different efficiency levels. So not just your location, it'll also be the particular IaaS. In terms of the density that Platform.sh offers, what's interesting there is, we have grid in which we can run very many projects in a very efficient way. So the servers are actually run a very high load, which actually is a much more efficient way of doing it rather than, at lower loads. Whereas, maybe typically in an IaaS situation, maybe you'd be running at 30 or 40% of load. With our servers, we really run at a much higher load. Maybe it's 80 or 90%, something like that. And then finally, you have the app performance side of things as well. And Platform.sh also offers basically APM and profiling. So we have all the analytics that allow you to be able to do that as well.
These kind of things you can just block the words. So if someone mentions the words prompt or
seeing more or less the same kind of thing in a different way, essentially more of a kind of a chart where you can actually see what the best way of optimizing things. We have these three levers that we have: the localization, optimization, and the density and right sizing. Of course, the intersection there, right in the middle. That's where, of course, you're going to get your sweet spot. If you can take all those three together, that's where you're going to have the best way of actually being able to do that kind of work. And in addition to that, we also have some incentives. So as well as running Platform.sh, we have a new product, which is a pass called Updone. And if you use Updone, which is essentially based on exactly the same setup as Platform.sh, but gives you much more flexibility in the way that you can actually very granularly define, the sizing of your your various services, your various runtimes and so on, and you're able to be much more granular in the way that you manage all of your environments, we can offer a 3% discount is what we're offering to customers who actually choose greener regions as well. We're also committed to actually having the certifications in place, so not just actually talking the talk, but also being determined to actually have, not real proof of what we do there. So, for example, we have B Corp certification, which we achieved this year. We also have the EcoVadis certification, which is a kind of supply chain certification. And as well as that, we also have another one, which come on. We also have not just EcoVadis and B Corp. What's the other one that we have, Mathieu? Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it's right there on the. Sorry, I'm kind of. Yeah, and then of course Greenly as well. And so we have the double gold medal for those as well, which I think really underlines what we do there. So in conclusion, I think we really do remain committed to working to lower the impact of our services. We believe that this is something that really benefits our customers. That the efficiency in operations and the faster time to market make a real difference, a difference that actually says something not only, for example, to the compliance team or the ESG team, but also to a CFO can make a difference as well. For example, that the green ops and FinOps in that case really are well aligned here, and the data can really show that. We have the discounts for green regions, and of course, we also think that we can help with reduced effort on compliance and sustainability, because obviously it's really important that people should be able to do that kind of thing. And in the end, these might be small steps, but of course, they can and they do result in lasting change, and that we really need to keep going in this direction, because it still is the right direction, even if things are a bit tricky right now. But in fact, even if there are some who are going in the opposite direction, I think it's still something that we can do together, and we're really glad that we have the opportunity to do that with people like the people from UNICEF and other customers who are committed to this kind of thing. And I'd love to talk to anyone who's got questions about this. And I think we still have a few minutes, so if you do have questions, please do let me know, and we can have a chat. Anyone? Okay, well, if you don't, then you're welcome to come by and have a chat to me and Mathieu on these topics, or others as well. And we also have some swag which we are trying to get rid of in the most ecologically sensitive way, which means giving it to everyone who's here as well today. So thank you very much. Okay. Right? Yeah.
So we heard that this was one-off moving to a new region in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. So what is planned for the project then for the next steps to make it even less, with less emissions and more green? That's probably a question as well to the implementation team. I know
Absolutely.
that we can support somehow with some of the tools already mentioned, but I just want in the project context, mm-hmm. maybe there's also something that can be applied to Drupal as a application that is widely mm-hmm. used. So maybe you did already uncover some efficiency tricks during that migration. yeah, if you feel comfortable answering Miro or
Yeah.
Sasha, it's
Yeah.
up to
Sasha,
you.
would you maybe share? That would be great. Yeah.
Yes, actually, I have a bit about that in our blog post. Basically, one thing we noticed a few weeks ago is that there are a lot of bots active on the website.
Sorry, Sasha, could you talk a bit more into the microphone?
I get on? Yes, okay. So there were a lot of bots active on the website, mostly our friends from OpenAI, who did tens of thousands of requests with weird parameters and so on. So we blocked a bunch of them. We set up improved robots text rows to reduce those requests. That worked quite well. There are flows around in circle around some pagers and facets and stuff like that. So we blocked that off. I'm also actively working on Drupal itself and performance improvement there. Just did a post about that as well, where we reduce cache operations and queries to serve pages.
Okay. Guess we'll adjourn, I guess. Thanks.